Okay, if you're a little new to RV life like I am, you have one of these on your Vista vintage cruiser from Gulfstream. I've got a single axle 19 ERD that I'm repacking the bearings on, and thought I'd give you a visual. If if you're like me, it's a little visual learning as to how this ezlube works or don't work, depending on how you want to look at it. All right, I'm going to try to do this one-handed. The thing to understand is when you undo that dust cover, that you've got this zert fitting here for your grease gun to attach to. When you pump your grease gun, you're going to push grease out of this hole back here, not this one. And what does that mean? Where the good and the bad is of that? See if I can give you the visual. Little one-handed action. Everything goes well. No, it didn't. Reposition. I'm back in that one-handed action. We're all set up here. We do this little pump, and you can see how that grease comes out. Now hold that thought. Let me show you what's going on. All right, visualizing in my mind's eye the pros and cons of the design. The pro being you're able to grease without taking the wheel off fairly easily. Add some additional grease incrementally to the main load bearing. Here you got the seal. This is the rear larger bearing, and here's the smaller taper one in front. Let me zoom out, we'll get a bigger picture here. So this one, in order to receive grease, here's the con. You got to pump grease all the way through this bearing, through this distance into here. See, all this old grease here that's in this bearing is got to come forward, get pushed out through this, and then out to the front, which you're going to need to clean all that off. That's just going to be a lot of grease. You got to travel this whole cavity down from this race to the race at the other end. Also, the concern, and here's where the seal is riding, as you load this cavity up, if you start getting too much pressure and you start pushing grease past the seal, then you're into your drum area for the brakes. And obviously we don't want grease in there. We want friction. So for me, the way I restate this, put some grease in here. Let's say it's more of a mileage thing, and everyone's gonna have a different opinion. If I'm only gonna travel a couple hundred miles a year, I might come back next year, give 2 pumps while I'm spinning the wheel, refresh this bearing, and let it go. This one here is not hard to get off, and when I go to assemble that, I'll show you how this all goes together, and you can get a visual on the complete assembly. And you can see how this one is a lot easier to service than the rear. So there's the advantage again, to this. Yeah, an easy serviceability to the rear, manually do the front, makes the job fairly quick in my mind's eye, and away you go. And you don't have to replace the seal in that scenario. And versus if you were to manually do both front and rear, then you gotta pull the seal. You gotta get the part. Call that time, call that money, inconvenience. It's not an expensive part, but it's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go pick up the seal, give me some grease, and come back, show you how it goes together. All right, back from the store. A little shout out to D&B Supply, kind of like a Tractor Supply if you're familiar with those guys. You can see that 1019 seal. Had the pair of seals for like $7. It makes the life real easy, and it was close. Get your favorite your grease. Pick your flavor. Got the bearing here, getting greased up. Gonna place the seal into here. Already have this kind of pre-lubed. Anyways, I'm gonna put a link in the description to the Trailer Master, I think it is, webpage. Explains this a lot better. I'm not replacing the race. The bearings are in really good shape. There's no scoring or anything on these. These are ready to go back in. So I can't do this, hold the phone. So I'm gonna slap this bearing in, pop in the seal, and then show you why, or show you how that rear bearing is captive. And you would need this to service that bearing if you're going to grease it manually versus using the ezlube. All right, once the seal is installed, This bearing is captive. It is not going to come out without pulling the seal. And there's no way to pull that seal without doing some sort of, damage to it when you go on the removal process. So again, on the ezlube, this is where it could be handy for you. You do a couple pumps here, as long as you're doing some maintaining to get to that back bearing just for your extended road trips. Maybe if you had a short driving season, those type of things. All right, let's move on to the rest of it. Gonna slap the drum on. First, gonna do some brake clean, get everything clean inside, put that on, paper bearing, washer, castle nut, tighten castle nut into the drum, won't rotate back off, reseat, and then just line that castle nut back one notch to the cotter pin drops in, and then we'll throw the wheel on. Gonna see me struggle here with the simple application of lug nuts. But get them all hand started, zip them on real quick, don't torque yet. All right, hopefully at this point, conceptually, you're gonna understand what's going on here. When you pull this plug out, put in your zert gun, right, and give this a pump, you wanna get this wheel to spin so that little back bearing is getting an even distribution of grease. So that, on the Vista vintage cruisers, any of the lightweight Gulfstreams that probably came out with the ezlube and other brands. Hopefully that helps you understand what this is and what it could do, pros and cons. Again, put a link in there for that Trailer Master site, give you a little more detail into the preloading and the bearing replacements, because he's really good at that. In closing, 100 foot-pounds of torque on your lug nuts. Replace your, just so you know, you can get new ones of these as well at the Tractor Supply store. Sometimes you'll worry about them wandering off. I got a little safety feature with this guy here. But thanks for watching.